Students, I'd like to welcome you to this presentation. I know we've talked about what a great honor this is for our school to have an individual such as, is it Major Crandall, is that correct, sir? Colonel Crandall, to be at our school today, receiving as a recipient of the Medal of Honor. This is one of the highest awards that our country can give to individuals who serve our country. It's surprising, but there's a lot of people in our midst who are veterans and have served our country before, and you may not know this, but one of them you know might well, and that's Mr. Wesson. Mr. Wesson, our assistant principal, served with a cavalry unit as well, and I'd like him to introduce Colonel Crandall.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks. And many of you did know that I had the opportunity to serve in the United States Army, and very proud of that. And as proud as I am of that, I'm even more proud to work with you guys, the young people of our future. Let me just read you a little bit about Colonel Crandall, and then we'll move on. Growing up in Olympia, Washington, Bruce Crandall, a high school baseball All-American, hoped to become a professional baseball player, but he was drafted into the Army in 1953 before he could sign a contract. He went through officer candidate school, just like me, and went through, after graduation, learned to fly fixed-wing aircraft as well as helicopters. During much of the next decade, he served in combat engineer units or flew topographic missions mapping in the Arctic, the deserts of Libya, and the jungles of Central and South America. The rest of Colonel Crandall's story, we're going to be able to have a chance to see here in a video here in a little bit, but I want to introduce to you at this time Lieutenant Colonel Bruce P. Crandall.
I was born and raised in a very small town where all the neighbors had the right to discipline you, and no one had locks on their doors, and it was just before the Second World War, and of course my dad went off to serve. My mother became a welder in a shipyard. Those of us that stayed home even, you had to learn what the Japanese airplanes looked like. And you would participate in night watches for aircraft. I graduated in 1951. In 1952, I got a letter in the mail that says, "Greetings, you've been selected by your friends and neighbors." And I was being drafted. And I went outside and kicked hell out of my two friends, and then checked my neighbors, and none of them had done that. So if they ever do start the draft again, they got to change that letter. It was a terrible way to find out that I was going in the service.
Washington native Bruce Crandall was drafted into the Army in 1953. He went through officer candidate school in the Corps of Engineers and was commissioned an officer just before his 21st birthday. Crandall signed up for flight school, where he learned to fly fixed-winged aircraft as well as helicopters, serving for over a decade as both an engineer and an aviator. Crandall entered the air assault business. By 1964, he was developing helicopter assault techniques that would soon be used in Vietnam. Crandall arrived in Vietnam in 1965 as the commanding officer of Company A, 229th Assault Helicopter Battalion in the 1st Cavalry Division.
In November, the NVA hit a camp called Play Me, and it was the beginning of an effort to try to cut the country in half. They came out of Cambodia and they hit the Special Forces camp at Play Me. Then on about the 13th of November, we had lifted that siege, but we wanted to now hit the enemy that was trying to get out of the country, we thought. And General Moore was a lieutenant colonel at the time, had the 1st to 7th Camp, was told by his boss that this place would be a good place to go. They put their hand up on the map, and it was very close to the border of Cambodia, and we would catch the enemy before they could get out of the country. Now these assaults were beautifully planned. it was like the ballet, because everything was timed down to the second. We got airborne, 2 8-ship formations, and one's right behind the other. The first thing that has to happen is the artillery hits the target. And they go for 12 minutes or whatever. When the artillery lifts, they say splash. That means that the last round is in the landing zone. And that's going to be white smoke. On the 4th lift in, my second 8 aircraft started receiving fire pretty heavy. So up to there, we were not receiving any. And one of my aircraft in the last flight got hit bad enough so it had to be grounded when we got back to plane me. Well, we refueled and then came back, and I'm leading that first 8 aircraft. As I'm coming in, we catch all sorts of hell. As I'm flaring, there's enemy shooting at us from just outside of our rotors. They're in the wood line and they're in trees, and they're hitting people before they can get off the aircraft. And they shot my crew chief through the throat. One of my lieutenants got hit in the back of the head. And generally speaking, it couldn't have been worse. We pulled out of there and closed the landing zone. Well, somebody closed the landing zone. I wouldn't have let my next 8 aircraft come in under any circumstance at that time. 4 out of my 8 aircraft had to be grounded back at Play Me. On the way back, I realized that there was a real problem in here, and we weren't going to carry troops in any further, but I better take a look at what's going on personally. And I asked for another aircraft to go with me once we got on the ground. And I knew we'd go back with ammo, and I knew that with that amount of firefight going on, they would be running short because I knew what they carried in. We averaged 2 miles a minute, and so it's 7 minutes to go, and to come back is another 7, and that's too long between. And so I decided to go to the fire base, which was Falcon, which was only 5 miles away. I had the ammunition moved. The Chinooks brought it to Firebase Falcon, and I would do the medevac to there. We go back, and I get out close to the area, and I call the commander Moore on the radio and said, I'm out there, and I said, I've got ammo. He said he needed the ammo, and I said, okay, we'll bring it in. He says, we'll cover you as much as possible. So we did come in, and as we're making the approach in, we get heavy fire. And the lift before that, when I came out, I had 3 dead and 3 wounded on my aircraft. So this time, we don't have any people, but I start carrying wounded out. And on the next lift in, I'd gone to Falcon, and I found 2 medevac aircraft were there. And I knew that those are the guys that should be carrying out the wounded, because my crew chiefs and gunners knew first aid. They're not medics. As they were loading the boxes of ammo on for the next lift, I went over to the 2 medic aircraft and said, follow me, and I had of course, I'm field grade, and they paid attention. And we took off. I told them, you land exactly where I did. You come in exactly the way I did. So we went in, unloaded the ammo, and got the hell out of there. And in comes the medevac. Well, they first off, they came in too high. And then the first one got on the ground, and the second one starts receiving fire. And he screams that he's been hit. The most he got out was 2 people, and they're gone. And they don't go anymore the rest of the day. And so then we came back around and started the medevac.
Despite the unremitting enemy fire, Crandall continued to fly resupply and evacuation missions in and out of the landing zone until long after sundown. By the time he'd completed his 22nd flight, he and his wingmen had evacuated more than 70 wounded and helped to ensure the survival of the entire battalion.
The Medal of Honor is beyond description for a military dog. And it was a fantastic experience. The president is so down to earth. I wore my hat during the ceremony because I thought it was the thing to do. And one of the generals in the office there said, "You don't think I ought to do it?" And I says, "You know, General, not to be, I'm going to wear it. But you got to remember where this president comes from. And he wears Stetsons. And I think he'll love it. And the first cav is at Fort Hood, and the president knows that. So he's going to like that." And he did. He made a comment about it. I've talked to a lot of young people, and when I'm talking to them about heroism and about the medal and about service in the country, I try to bring it down to their level so they understand that even if they're not going into the military, they still have some responsibility for service, responsibility for the country, responsibility to be good citizens, responsibility to help where there's help needed in the community. And I think that the military brotherhood and looking out for each other is shared in the civilian sector. A fireman who sees another fireman going into a building will go with him, whether they're in the same department or not. And they'll help each other, and the police will do the same thing. So there's a lot of that kind of thing. There's a relationship that you just can't explain. But everybody who's ever been in that situation knows what it is. I was told that was inappropriate in the White House. And we covered that a little bit there, but the aide to the president said the hat's inappropriate, and I said, "Stetson, sir, Stetson's inappropriate." He says, "The Stetson's inappropriate," and I told him, "Well, it's not the last inappropriate thing I'm going to do in my life." And it hasn't been. Now, you saw my dog come out. He's my hearing aid. Huey answers my alarm clocks in the morning and does all sorts of other little things. But I take him to Wounded Warriors and I put him on the bed with them, and he, within a couple of minutes, he's got everybody in the room happy. Huey, come here. Stick him up. Stick him up. That's not up. Come on. Come here. Come here. Stick him up. Down. 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 Don't clean the floor. Down. See how well behaved? Come on. Bye-bye. After this is over, you can come up and pet him or play with him if you want, if we have the time. So you want me to talk less and come up more. As I said, I was born and raised in Olympia, Washington, and when I was a four-sports letterman in middle school, we called it junior high, and I was the smallest guy on the All-American team in high school baseball, and I was a cleanup hitter. I weighed 143 pounds and was about 5'6". I probably was 5'4", but I lied a little bit. Anyhow, I didn't have the slightest idea that I would ever be in the service or for any period of time. But all my family had served. And my brother was in the Navy. And when I got the letter, the draft letter, I didn't have to go. I was in the National Guard unit, but I wanted to play ball in the military, so I wanted to spend 2 years serving, and that's what I ended up trying to do. And in basic training, I threw a hand grenade too far and tore my rotator cuff, so there went the baseball career. But you know, bad things happen for good reasons, and as it turned out, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. At 19, I met a little beautiful woman, young lady at the time. She was 16. I now have granddaughters, so I understand why her mother got excited. But I proposed to her, and I proposed to her when she was 17, 18, 19. And we always knew we were going to get married, but it just had to have the time. And so when I was 22, she said yes. And I had a birthday, and she had a birthday, and we got married and we ended up having 3 sons. And they all have master's degrees. They all were Eagle Scouts in high school, and they all were almost straight-A students. And my wife says she raised 4 boys. I had her for 54 years. We lived in 53 homes. We actually lived in 52 homes in 44 years because we lived in the house I'm in now for 10 years. The reason I'm telling you that is because my sons had at least 16 high schools and grade schools, and it didn't hurt them that much. They were international students. But they learned about other countries, and I urge you, if you have the opportunity to visit other countries and to learn about them. But before you go, learn about them, read about them, do whatever you can do with that computer stuff. And us old folks don't work that well. When my wife passed away 3.5 years ago now, she left me with a cell phone, an iPad, a computer, laptop, a dishwasher, a microwave, washer and dryer. And she'd done all those things before, and so I ended up having to learn all this stuff as an older man. I'm 81 years old. God has left me on this earth to see if I will change my conduct, so I still have some time. I suggest to all of you try to live a good enough life that if you do have to go in a hurry, that you've passed the test. I know my wife's in heaven waiting for me, and someday I'll join her. One of the things I want to talk about several things. One, I want to talk about our character development program that is the legacy of the Medal of Honor Society. And I want to talk about the Medal of Honor and the people we have now that are wearing it. I also have a good conduct medal. I wear that under my collar. And that's a lot harder to explain than this. This is the Medal of Honor. This happens to you. You don't go out and get it. This is an event that occurs usually in one day, but it's one event, and it has to be witnessed by at least 2 people that survive. Over half of them, about 70%, are posthumous. We have 78 living recipients. We got another one from the War on Terror yesterday, I think it was. Anyhow, the average age is my age, almost. If it wasn't for the War on Terror young guys, they brought our average age down a whole year. We would be at about 80 as the average age. Our oldest one is in his late 90s, and we have about 8 years to get our character development program in every school in the United States and every middle school. And the program, we need supporters, but it's not the money that's a problem to us, it's time. Because there's 17,700 school districts, and they all set their curriculum by them in that school district. So we have a real challenge ahead of us. But every one of our recipients is able to attends these schools and talks about our character development program and tries to be an advocate with the young folks. The reason we think this is important is because you've been in almost all of your life, there's been a war going on, but you haven't been participants. When we were young in the Second World War, we were participants. 12% of the country was in the military. Now less than 1% is. When my father went away to the war, he went for 4 years. And my uncle, my great uncle, had 2 sons, and he lost them both at the beginning of the war. And then he lost his wife. And he came to live with us. And that's what happened in those days. You always had your grandmother, your grandfather, or someone came to live with you if you lived long enough, because that was expected. And we were participants. I had to give up my bicycle. I had to give up the tires. Anything that could be used in the war effort, we had to give up as young folks. So by your age, I had I'd already performed as a night light reviewer for our neighborhood. I'd go out at 9 o'clock at night and check all the houses to see if the light was leaking through windows, because they're supposed to be blacked out. And that gave me a heck of an opportunity to pretend like I was doing something worthwhile. And I think I was, because everyone in my neighborhood thought the Japanese were going to come across the Washington coastline, and we'd be the first ones in the fight. I was my batting average is 3 times my grade point, and if your batting average is 3 times your grade point, you make All-American if you're graduating. And I hit over 600, so my whole thoughts when I was your age was play ball. Play professionally. And just to give you a hint, there were no big league teams west of the Mississippi. St. Louis was the furthest west that there were any big league teams. So by going in the Army, I could be seen by the professional scouts, and the Army had quite a few real good teams. If you have a goal that you want, make the effort to get there. Do your studying. Those of you that are C students, you're not C students because you don't have the capability. When I graduated from college, I had a 4-point. When I graduated from high school, I won't tell you what my grade average was. My favorite teacher told me that it would be a cold day in hell if I ever graduated from college. It was minus 15 degrees in Omaha, Nebraska. It was January of 1969. I graduated from high school in 1951. So for 18 years, I was going to school. I'd go to school on nights and weekends, and my wife gave me the time. My sons thought my favorite expression was, "Honey, would you tell the kids to knock it off? I'm trying to study." And basically, I worked very hard at getting the grades. It became important to my family and to my life that I do it. However, my wife thought that I should call one of the teachers. Now, the teachers love to hear from you if you are successful. So when you become successful, well, call your teachers and tell them what you've done. They won't believe it. But my favorite teacher, my wife says, call. I said, I don't think so. She says, call. She'll love it. My wife already had the phone number. She dialed it. And Mrs. K answered the phone. And I said, Mrs. K, this is Bruce Crandall. And she says, I know your voice. Now, when you've made an impression, that good an impression on the teacher, so that 18 years later she remembers your voice, that's pretty impressive. Except probably it was the wrong reason she remembered my voice, but anyhow, I told her I'd got a bachelor's degree and I graduated at the top of the class. I had straight A's. Absolute silence, and finally she came back on the phone and she says, Bruce, I'm proud for you, but this could just show how far in the bucket the education system has gone. You want to be a little careful when you talk to your teachers. It's when I was so small, I wanted to be big in the worst way. I grew when I was 20 years old. So any of you that are altitude handicapped, you still have a chance. And it don't matter. If you're tough enough, you can make them stop making fun of you. But I grew when I was in officer school, and that's a heck of a problem. I had a great experience when I finally got in the Army. They sent me 12 miles from home after they drafted me. And I just already told my girlfriend and all my friends, and I was going to Korea. I went 12 miles. And I went to Fort Lewis, Washington. Well, I threw the hand grenade too far in the training. So I was going to just spend my 2 years anyhow. I ended up going through amphibious training up at Fort Worden, Washington, which is 40 miles from home. And I was on the Puget Sound. And I ran a boat up on the beach and had my girlfriend meet me. This was a different girlfriend. Anyhow, the tide went out and we got stuck there. I saw no reason for my girlfriend to leave, so when the sergeant came up and caught me up, I was on the beach. He was rather offended. It didn't bother me a damn bit because I wasn't going to be a career man in the Army. And so he put my buddy in charge, and from then on we backed up every time we were on the beach. And we didn't use fuel. Then we siphoned the fuel out into 50-gallon drums the next time. Finally, he got tired of all this stuff, and he called us in, and he says, "You two are too fouled up to be in the Army." And he says, "You might make corporal someday, and I don't want that on my conscience, but you'd make good second lieutenants." And so I went to OCS. In order to get rid of me, he actually gave me the opportunity to get promoted. And that's when I learned that if you foul up badly enough, sometimes you don't have to, it can work out well. I've had some of the finest people I've ever known have been my brothers on the battlefield, but also in travel. My classmates they still meet the first Wednesday of every month. The class of 1951 gets together in Olympia, Washington for lunch. And I want to advocate that for all of you. Find somebody who hasn't got anything else to do that likes to keep involved with other people's business and get them to keep your class roster and invite you to someplace here in the city, if you stay here, for a monthly get-together. Because there'll be no better thing that you do to keep track of each other. If you have pictures being taken in your class, make sure you identify everybody because you'll forget who they are. And if you graduate and you weigh 140 some pounds and you come back at the 25th reunion and you weigh 200 and some, they won't know who you are. The only thing they remember about me, and I'm the most decorated, of course, graduate of the high school. And the ball fields are named after me because of baseball, not because of this. But the important thing is that my classmates bring me right down to speed. When Mrs. K was a school teacher, but her daughter was in our class. And Mrs. K asked me to take Marcia to the junior prom. Do you have that kind of thing? Do you have a class proms? Anyhow, Marcia was 5'7", weighed 160, bigger than I was. And Mrs. K asked me to take her to the junior prom. And she mentioned she'd pay and I said, that's okay. I wanted to go. And the next day, I invited Marcia. The day after that, I was in the lunchroom, and Marcia came up from behind and kicked my feet out from under me and started beating hell out of me in the cafeteria. And that's how how they remember me, as being beat up in the school cafeteria by a girl. It's a little bit difficult to live with. Every time I got together with my classmates after that, I checked to see if Marcia was in the room, because I figured she'd get me again if it was possible. I want to talk about the character development program. We have got 3 states involved, but the states don't run the curriculum, so we have to get down to the school districts. It started out in Erie, Pennsylvania. The school teachers there worked with us to develop a program. We have 52 lesson plans that are available in this character development program. They're available for the teachers to use in any manner they see fit in the classroom. And our program, I'm going to read off, is to provide students with the opportunity to explore the important concepts of courage, commitment, sacrifice, patriotism, integrity, and citizenship. And those are the things that we think are important for you to understand. Every one of you has the courage that we have. Anybody who's wearing this is a victim of what happened that day at that time. If you get in a situation, you will do what is right, and we want you to understand that, because some of you will get in those kind of situations in your home. I had the privilege of going to Connecticut to honor the 6 teachers that were killed with the 20 students, and every one of those teachers came with the courage to face up to what was happening, and they died doing it. And so we want everyone to know that it's in you. It's not us. We're not particularly brave. We're not particularly heroes. We were individuals that met that problem at that time. The day that my wingman and I got the award, we didn't have the slightest idea that this was going to happen. I was scheduled to lift 3 battalions total, and I didn't get through the first one before we caught it. So for courage, it's not courage to fight. It's not that kind of courage. It's the courage to do the right thing. And we want you to all understand you have that, and you should develop that, and you should understand it, because you will get into situations someday where you can use that kind of courage. In citizenship, we want you to all understand how lucky you are to be Americans. Contrary to what you might read or see on the press, we're the finest nation in the world. We give more than any other nation to others. We give more to foreign governments and to help for international problems like AIDS and SARS. And we are the nation that does the most, and we do the most in our country. Every one of you is living in a society that if you had a choice of any other country, you would come to here. We believe that. And so you started out here, but you will have a need in your lifetime to pay off our debts and some of the things that we've caused, and you'll have to take care of it. You will have a responsibility. Some of you will become elected officials. Some of you will become doctors. Some of you will become lawyers, God forbid. I have a lawyer and a banker, international banker, and our number 3 son is a minister. And I won't say where did I go wrong with that boy, but he fell in love with God and a girl when he was at Arizona State, and he dropped out of school, and he sold my Mustang convertible. He was in a co-ed dorm. He never invited me. I'm not supposed to be saying that kind of. I have a good conduct medal. Anyhow, get back to where the integrity. One of the great things that all of us have is our integrity. trustworthiness, the ability to make a friend know that you'll be a friend when the time is really bad. And you should be a friend like that. If you don't have the trust of yourself, you won't have trust of others. So have confidence in what you are, but also give your friends a break and don't tell everybody everything you know about them when you're describing them. Well, I didn't say I earned that good conduct medal. That's the best way I can put it. I would never tell you that my conduct was good enough to get one of these. My wife would tell you that my conduct was never good enough to get one of these. For service, we don't want you to have a service in the military. If you want to join the military, we support it because you will be limited to joining the military if you don't have good conduct and integrity, and if you're testing drugs and testing to see if somebody's car is locked, or doing the little things that become a pain in the butt, you won't get in the military. We don't take. When we had the draft, we would take everybody. We had young folks that were given the choice to go in the Army or go to jail. And all we did was change where they went to jail. We had the largest stockades we've ever had. And the Army and all the military were frowned on by local cities. Tacoma, Washington has Fort Lewis right next to it, and they would have gotten rid of that fort just like that, because during the draft you had people coming in to the military at Fort Lewis. They were going downtown and robbing the 7-Elevens and doing other little sweet things that make you so desirable in the neighborhood. We won't accept you unless you have good grades. We won't accept you unless you've proven yourselves to be the type of person that will serve well and be good soldiers, good citizens. I would ask you, if you decide to do service in the military, go to one of the academies if you can get in. If you are a football player, go to West Point and beat Navy, for gosh sake. 12 years in a row they beat us. It's totally unacceptable. My brother's Navy, retired. For 12 years, I've sent him $100. I've had to listen to him for the whole damn year. It's not acceptable. I sat in the stadium, it was snowing, cold, just to watch us get beat again. I'll have to tell you the story, because I was in Korea 4 years ago visiting, and my escorts, I had two. They were both West Point captains. They were classmates at the academy. And one of them was 6'4" and weighs 220, and the other one's 5'1", weighed 110 maybe. Of course, one of them has long hair. The last day, I asked them both what they did at West Point. And they gave me the answer, and now I know why Army keeps getting beat. The 6'4" guy was a cheerleader, and the 5'1" was a triathlete, and still is. She's training she teaches at West Point. Now, how can you have a guy 6'4" and weighs 220 being a cheerleader when you need him on the football field? So we got to change. We get the good people, but we're not using them the right way. If you decide to go into the military, even if you're not going for a career, the military academies is great education, and you can carry it into any field. It used to be that the top 10% of West Point went into the Corps of Engineers, and they became district engineers, and they worked in the civilian contract. When I got out of the military, I had gotten enough of an education and master's in public administration, and I had been in the Corps of Engineers, and I'd been a facility engineer for the Army in Thailand. I had 3,800 employees that worked under contract that I ran. So when I got out, I became a city manager in California. I spent 3 years doing Prop 13, and I like combat better, so I quit doing that. And I went to Public Works in Mesa, Arizona, and for 14 years I was there in the Public Works Department running that. So you can use the education you get, but if you get it from one of the academies, you can use it a lot better, and I'll guarantee you, you can become school teachers, you can become anything you want almost. The guy that operated on my back graduated second in his class from the military academy, and graduated from Yale Medical School. We had a number of guys that went on into education, and they teach in high schools and across our country. They spend their time in the military, their 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, and they decide that they'll get out. But if you stay in, you're going to have these friends that you went to school with. They'll be in the same business as you are, and you'll have them as your brothers and sisters. And it's a great way to serve in the military. I wish I had gone to one of the academies personally. And so that's as much recruiting as I'm going to do. I'm not trying to get you in the military. I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do it unless you want to make at least you have some feeling you might want to make it. If you go in there and you're just doing it to get away from something, you won't get away from whatever it is, and you'll end up not enjoying any time in the military. And it can be a wonderful experience. Your teachers here, one of our medal recipients went to teaching in Bremerton, Washington. He was 31 years there, and most of them didn't know that that's what he had the medal, because it isn't important to us. It's important to us because it gives the opportunity to talk to young folks like you and to try to influence where we're going. If you're as big as that, some of these pretty good sized boys in here, West Point is a good place. That's the end of my recruiting campaign. I have lived in my first flying was in the Arctic, mapping the Arctic slope, and the oil was up there at that time. It was listed as U.S. Navy Petroleum Reserve during the Second World War, and yet if you go to the University of Alaska, it says they discovered that oil in the 60s. That was Prudhoe Bay. All the rest of the North Slope had oil under it and still does. And it's one great source of petroleum for us, for our country. After that, I went to North Africa and was mapping in the desert of Libya from Algeria and Tunisia to Egypt, and it was for the oil. The oil companies followed us across the desert. They can't get their leases until they get the surveying and the land, so they can identify the property limits. After that, I went to Panama, and I went all over Central and South America. And I loved it, but it meant that my family moved every time I did one of these things. So I had to understand that the boys had to be well disciplined on their own, self-discipline, not my discipline. My wife was the strength in the family, and the boys are now doing things in foreign countries. The oldest boy has all of Central and South America for his bank, but he gives up his time and his effort to help others in those countries. He speaks Portuguese and Spanish. Brazil is Portuguese speaking, for those of you who haven't been in that situation. The reason I'm telling you that is because I want you to give back to other countries too if you get the opportunity. Don't think that the borders of our country are the borders of your thinking. You'll love traveling in other countries and seeing what the communities do, what the citizens do. I guarantee you, even if that other country's Canada, they speak French in one part of it. So you take French if you're going to live up there. If I had to do all over again, what would I change? I would have talked that young 16-year-old into marrying me a lot sooner. Because I knew I loved her from that moment. If the important thing in my day is you didn't fool around with your girlfriend, because if something happened, you got married. Because her dad could shoot. Every one of those guys was trained in the Second World War. I'll guarantee you, don't fool around with the police officer's daughter. And that'd get you in a lot of trouble. But if you, at your age, even if you hit somebody that you know is the right person, stick with it. Best thing ever happened to me. And that's the one thing I would change, though, is that I would have tried to talk her into it a couple of years earlier. Her mother never forgave me anyhow, but she was an only child. I was in the military, and you can figure out how that happened. I have a bad hearing, and Huey is named after my helicopters. He wakes me up in the morning. He answers the alarm clock. The first time he did it, he licked my ears. When you're 81, you don't need that. He answers doorbells and telephones that ring. We were out for dinner at a friend's house, and he started kicking my friend. And I said, "There's something wrong." We were having dinner. And my friend got up and walked around, and the kids had left the refrigerator door open, and he's telling them that little bell is ringing, you better do something. And we don't have bells on our refrigerator, but he's that well trained. His birthday is a Medal of Honor Day, which is the 25th of March every year. And we go to Washington, D.C., and we gather there at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, because they're issued the Medal of Honor. We don't know who they are, but they represent all of those who should have gotten the medal or could have gotten the medal, that there was no survivors. And so he goes there now, and he goes everywhere with me. He answers, if there's a fire alarm, I don't hear it, smoke alarms, whatever. But he's a real asset to me, but he's a real asset to everyone that I take him to visit. So I will answer any questions. I rambled on a little bit, but when you're 81, you can get away with it. So I will be happy to answer any questions. If you have to go back to class, you better ask questions.
How long were you in Vietnam?
I went twice. My first tour, I led 756 combat missions in the lead helicopter, and I was there from 1965, 66. I was home for 12 months, and I went back to the same unit, first cav, and I lasted 4 months, and I ended up in the hospital for 5 months. I went down in a helicopter and broke my back and chest, gave me a lousy attitude. But my sons had 5 schools while I went to Vietnam twice. And we came in, went into Fort Benning to organize the CAV, and we went to Kent, Washington, just out of Seattle. And 13 months later, I came home from Vietnam, and we went to Fort Carson, Colorado, and then I went to the Armed Forces Staff College after being at Carson for 6 months. And the Staff College is 6 months, and then I went back to Vietnam, and they went back to Kent. So we just had too many schools. We don't do that anymore in the Army. The family can stay. Those of you, how many of you have seen the movie We Were Soldiers? You shouldn't go watch stuff like that. Anyhow, Greg Kinnear played me in the movie, and they used our names, and it was about 75% accurate. But it showed us staying at Fort Benning. We didn't do that. We all had to get off and get our families either into Columbus or wherever we wanted to take them, but you had to get off the post. You don't do that anymore. The families stay wherever they are. The unit comes back to wherever they went from, even if it's Germany. And so you can afford to buy a house because you know you'll be there for long enough. But in my day, you couldn't do that. All right, don't forget you're going to have to go back to class if you don't ask another question.
How long did you serve?
I was in service for 25 years. I'm a retired colonel, but sometimes people get through. You know, the system doesn't always weed us out. I love the flying part. There's nothing as exciting as flying a small helicopter over the jungles and not knowing where the hell you are. Go ahead.
How long have you had your Stetson?
How long have I had?
Your Stetson?
How long you had your Stetson?
Oh, I got that in 1965, 64. And I have about 4 of them now. But we have this one tells the unit I was in. This was the battalion. This is, I'm a member of the Medal of Honor Society. And the wings, there's a master aviators, and that's my rank. So you wear a lot of stuff that tells people who you are. You can brag a little bit. Yes, sir.
How many medals have you earned while in service?
I couldn't hear that.
How many medals have you earned while in service?
Beats the hell out of me. I really don't know. I have 23 air medals. I've got a whole bunch of service type medals. Those are the things that go under and make it look like you've been in combat your whole life. No, I don't know. I've got 3 DFCs. I had a distinguished service medal. I've got the medal. That's the important. And I have a good conduct medal. Only enlisted guys get the good conduct medal. So if you see it on somebody, you know that he came out of the ranks. And we're just bragging about that.
Why did you choose to go into flying?
What did I?
Why did you choose to go into flying?
Why did you choose to go into flying?
Well, some colonel went and came to our class before we graduated and suggested we do it. And then I found out you got paid a little extra. I'd never been in an aircraft. I'd been in one commercial aircraft, but I'd never flown anything. And in flight school, went to San Marcos, Texas. At the end of 4 hours, my instructor pilot got out and told me to go. And I told him, I thought he meant go park. And he said, no, go fly. I said, I don't do that. He says, yes, you do. And I was a second lieutenant, so he was the first lieutenant. And that means he was senior to me. And so I tried it. I made 3 approaches to the runway before I finally got that damn thing shut down. You've never seen anybody that had to go to the bathroom as bad as I did.
How did you find out you were receiving the Medal of Honor?
That was a fun one. My wingman got it first in 2001, and I had turned down the opportunity because we were going for the same board, and he's the only one that deserted. He volunteered. I'm the commander. Commanders have a different responsibility. I had to do what I did. He didn't have to volunteer, but he did. So in 2001, he received the award, and then in 2007, my wife and I are driving in our motorhome, we're leaving Seattle, and we're going to San Diego, and then we're going to go cross country. And the cell phone rings. My wife answers it, and the guy on the phone says, I want to speak to Bruce Crandall. And she says, well, he's driving, and he doesn't talk to anyone when he's driving the motorhome. That's her rule, not mine. And anyhow, the guy says, well, he'll want to talk to me. And she says, sure. Why? He says, because I'm calling from the White House. Well, right away, my wife says, sure you are. Because we have friends that do that kind of stuff. I had one buddy that could convince you he was anyone because of that damn mimicking. Anyhow, he says, no, I'm really calling from the White House, and I need to talk to him. And she finally decided maybe he was. So I pulled off at the next exit, and he tells me that I'll be getting the Medal of Honor. And then I think he's somebody pulling my leg. But it turned out he wasn't. And I received the medal from George W. Bush, and last night I had the honor and privilege of presenting him with the Medal of Honor Society's award, for the highest award we can give anyone for their service. And for me to get that opportunity was just wonderful. He likes the Stetson. Yes, sir.
What was the moment you realized you loved being in the military?
I never loved being in the military. You don't want to do that. It ruins your image. If you're not bitching about it, you just don't belong. Yeah. Even the Marines don't go that far. Yes, sir.
How was your family during that time in Vietnam?
How was my family? My wife took real good care of them. We always were back home where Grandma and Grandpa were, and when I got knocked down, I became a problem. The family was really good because they were well organized. My wife took good care. They went back into the school system that they'd come out of once before, and but when I got into the hospital, I was in the hospital in Madigan finally. I went into Japan first until they got me stabilized. And then I came back to Madigan. And that was 75 miles from home. And that really became a problem for her because when I'm in combat, she doesn't have to do anything but worry about my health. But when I'm in the hospital, I expect her to come and see me every day. And I'm damned unreasonable about it. And of course she can't. And the times that she missed, I felt put out. And so I finally, I grew up a little bit. But it was tougher when I was in the hospital than when I was in combat. So it's different. Yes, sir.
What's your favorite country you've ever been to?
Costa Rica. I helped map that country. It's a democracy. In 1948, the last overthrowing of the government took place, and the guy that did it was married to an American woman, and she convinced him and the country to adopt the American Constitution pretty much, so that they became a democracy, and the president could only be elected for 2 terms. And so her husband agreed to it, and then she went to the American ambassador and convinced him that he should speak for the U.S. in guaranteeing the sovereignty of Costa Rica. And it's got Nicaragua on one border and Panama on the other. And during those days, the Somozas had Nicaragua, and they were fairly friendly toward the Americans. The Somozas, one of them graduated from West Point. And Panama was an American organization in reality. The Canal Zone was commanded by a 2-star Corps of Engineers general, always. And so she was tremendously influential in the country becoming a democracy. But more important than that, they didn't develop a military then. So they were able to spend their money on education, on infrastructure, and all that. So it's a great country to visit. There were 10,000 Americans in there in 1963. I don't know how many there are now. One of the survey points that I had was on top of a mountain called Arnell, and it acted like Mount St. Helens one afternoon and blew that survey point about 80 miles. I was glad I wasn't on top of it. Any other questions? Okay.
What was going
what was going? When I was, yeah. In my record, it says I went in there 22 times, but that was with one aircraft. We probably went in 60 or 70 times because I was only flying 5 miles away, and we flew 14 and a half hours. I flew 5 aircraft that day, and the only thing that was going through my mind is don't do something that gets some of my people killed. Don't do something dumb. And I later was told it was pretty damn dumb to keep going, but it wasn't. I owed it to him. I didn't know that commander. In the movie, it shows him being selecting me as his personal pilot, but I supported 8 battalions like him, and we just had a commitment to those guys on the ground that they had to us, that we will come and they will defend us if we go down. If I had crashed in that landing zone, I had no fear that they wouldn't be doing all they could to keep me protected. But the greatest fear in combat is that you'll do something that causes others to. And I was ready for my people to have some die, the KIAs, some wounded, WIAs. But I wasn't prepared for the fact that I lost 4 guys as MIAs. I lost a helicopter in December 1965, and we buried them at Arlington in 2006. So they're together again. But you just don't want to do something that creates a problem for others, and get somebody killed unnecessarily or wounded even. So it's your brothers, your sisters. You live in a helicopter a lot, and you get to know. You get to know and trust. There's no greater sense of brotherhood than you have in the military when you're in a combat situation. It's just there, and if anyone's ever done it, they know what we're talking about. Yes, sir.
What other aircraft did you fly?
What other aircraft did I fly? I flew L-19s, which is a Cessna. I flew Beavers, Otters. I flew H-23s, H-13s, H-19s, H-34. I flew, most of my flying was in Hueys. But in the mapping business, you'd fly a helicopter one day and an airplane the next. It was, in those days you didn't have GPS or anything else. I have a stopwatch that's still in my collection that I had hanging around my neck, and I would punch that, and that would tell me the time that we took off. And then when as I would go along, I would check it to see how far I'd gone, and that was how we went. Time and distance was how we flew in those days. Today you've got all sorts of night vision goggles, and you've got the GPS, and you can't hardly get in trouble. I could. I'll tell you one other little thing about it. In the old days, you didn't have regulations like they have now. When I first got out of flight school, I went under the Golden Gate Bridge probably a dozen times because there was no regulation about helicopters. It was fun. I would park in a restaurant parking lot down the beach from San Francisco and have breakfast and flirt with the steward and the waitresses. That didn't work very well, but it was fun, and you get away with it. I had a colonel catch me coming back. I came under the bridge coming back from being down at breakfast, and he came up and he says, "Going under that bridge is dangerous." I says, "Sir?" He says, "Flying under the bridge is dangerous." I says, "Did you notice that the U.S. Navy runs carriers under there?" They sent us away from Presidio. They moved us to Stockton, California 2 weeks later. I hope it wasn't caused by me, but Stockton was not near as much fun as San Francisco for a bachelor. All right, sir. I have a book
yes, sir.
that it's the Medal of Honor book, and it has all of our living recipients.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we to put that in there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for honors coming to our school. Let's give them a round of applause.
also have one of my points for you.
Thank you, sir.
Come out. Yes. How is it? Huh? Come down. Down. Down, Huey. Down. Down. Stick 'em up. Stick 'em up. Come up. Come on. If you ever need help hearing, what a blessing. It beats the hell out of having one of your kids wake you up. It also is pretty good when you licks you on the ear.
Well, thank you, Colonel Crandall. We appreciate your time. We thank you for your service. We'll let you vacate, and thank you again, and safe travels.
Yep.
Take care, sir. Thank you. You bet. Let's sit tight here a second while Colonel Crandall leaves. I want to tell you guys something before we get going. There are a few opportunities I get to do things that I tell you how much I appreciate you. And I want to tell you today how much I appreciate you. You guys represent our school very well, and I appreciate it. I know sometimes that speakers talk a little long, and we get a little antsy in our chairs, but you guys did great. And I'm very appreciative and thankful how well you represent our school, and I owe you a lot of thanks, and I hope you have a great weekend, but you got to go to 6th period. So thanks, guys. You did great. Thank you.